Welcome back to The Loop, your weekly dose of all things property management. I'm your host, Colin Stewart, and each week we're going to dive into the latest trends, strategies, and stories shaping the property management world. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started, we're here to provide insights, expert interviews, and practical tips to help you navigate the ever-evolving landscape of property management. In today's episode, we're joined by Robert Edwards, founder of Bed Bug Coach, who you'll note, not a property manager, used to be one, spent 2 decades building a property management company before making the surprising decision to exit the business at its peak. We explore how tech reshaped the value of the property managers, why market economics pushed him to pivot, and how he built the thriving consulting business specializing in evictions and bed bug consulting. If you've ever wondered where property management is heading or how to recognize when it's time to reinvent your business, this is the episode for you. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Colin.
I'm looking forward to this one. In particular, we've got some fun stuff to end on, but I don't want to start with the fun stuff. I wanted to tease it so people had to listen to the whole thing or just jump right to the end. Talk to me about, you're out of the business now, but let's talk about how you got into the business.
So I'm out of the business as in traditional property management. I still do evictions and eviction consulting as a specialty. But yeah, I got into it 22 years ago, 24 years ago, the way most people, or many people do, and that's they were an investor themselves. As they scaled up, they found themselves building the systems and the hiring on staff and that sort of thing. And then other investors wound up coming to us and saying, who's managing your properties? And we're saying, well, we were self-managing, and they got us to do it for them. So we were a little reluctant to get into that, but that's what happened, and it's just snowballed over the years.
I love it. If we were to look back 20 years ago at what property management looked like, what would surprise people that are just getting into the field now?
So a lot has changed. And I think it's really hard for property managers today to bring the level of value that we were able to bring 20 years ago. It used to be if somebody's self-managed, I mean, that's your competition other than other management, right? Is as an investor just self-managing. You know, if they had a vacancy, they would go to the newspaper, and you would have to walk into the newspaper office and all that hassle, and you'd plunk down $200-300 for a 2-week long ad to advertise an apartment that you were renting for $700 or something, right? And what we had was, due to economy of scale, we would run one ad. We would get a much reduced rate with the newspaper because we were just constantly running ads because we had such a large volume of properties. And then our ad would just have lines with addresses in it, right? So now one of the values that I'm bringing to my investor is that I got the reduced cost in the advertising. Similar thing happened was, the internet was fairly new at that point, and we were really on top of our listings on our own webpage, on our own internal webpage. Kind of led the field in. My wife's a photographer. She would take great photos of these places. I'd do really good floor plans, walkthrough videos, things that people were not doing in 2004. And so as a result, our branded website became the go-to for our community. If you were looking for properties, you went to our website. Now people are going to Zillow or finding them on Facebook Marketplace or that sort of thing. So there's just another thing that's changed that we don't bring in. Nobody goes to an individual property management website these days anymore. So that's another thing that's changed over time. And it's kind of democratized the process so that the investors that are self-managing or choosing to self-manage, it's really easy for them to do. Used to be they didn't have that access.
Why focus on the eviction side, which seems like, you're going from property management, which can be a very emotionally draining piece, to taking on arguably one of the most emotionally draining pieces, the most high stakes, high emotion part of the property management process.
So I kind of disagree, because honestly, the thing that gave me the most anxiety about property management was, did my phone just ring? You wake up and it's like, did my phone just ring? Is this a flood? Is it a fire? Is it whatever? And, in 20 some odd years, I've seen it all. I've seen, murders and suicides and dealt with hundreds of evictions. I've been through all of this terrible stuff. It's the unknown, right? Whereas evictions, they're really known. I know how this is going to end for them. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I don't fear evictions. I really don't. I hate to say it, but I kind of enjoy them. Right. Mm-hmm. I enjoy getting the resolution outside of court is what I really like. Right. Sometimes, because I have to pay a lawyer if we file, and there's this and that, and, $1,500 of my fee is an expense if I can give somebody $500, $700 to move out in a week, that's a better situation for all of us involved, right? Gives them a fresh start. They don't get the hit on their record. They're out of my way. They're out of the client's way, that sort of thing. So negotiating stuff like that is one of the tactics that we do.
Yeah, I see that. And you're taking a hard thing off of the property manager's plate where they're arguably, it's just another thing that they have to do. It's a pretty chunky process to manage. And then you can just
Right.
kind of do the same job over and over again.
Right, right. And a lot of first time or young investors, let's call them, they've done everything wrong. They don't have any of the paperwork right, that sort of thing, right? And a lawyer will come in and do that stuff for you, but they'll turn around and just, they're there to add their billable hours up, right? They're not really interested in talking to somebody and saying, "Hey, here's the situation. Here's how this is going to affect your family if you don't leave under your own your own will," right? Sometimes lawyers will do that, but they're really about getting better billable hours, right? Let's be truthful about it.
Yeah. I think there's a missed opportunity to call this Bob's Evictions and Bed Bug Services.
Mhm.
There may be like a tiny little Venn diagram overlap that. So I'm assuming you're not bringing bed bugs into the house. You're bringing bed bugs out of the house, joking aside.
Yeah. So property management is been full of all these other opportunities for me. I did want to go back about the eviction thing is they're easy for me to do. They're also far more lucrative because I have so little time involved in them, right? It's not a 24/7 job. They come in, I probably have 3 to 4 hours invested into an eviction if it goes well, right? It's probably about 10 or 12 if I have to deal with people's belongings and physically remove them with the sheriff and that sort of thing, right? And so the margins are off the charts far different than everyday management. And so, yeah, a lot of investors don't know how to do it. A lot of real estate agents want me to do it because they don't want the reputational hit on their sales side of their real estate business, right?
Mm.
We have plenty of bad reviews online that I wear as a badge of honor, right? Like you can read them and you can see through them if you're an investor. And my client's the investor, right? They can sit here and they go, "Oh, he like really pissed this person off because he got them out of the apartment," right? So
It's
yeah,
your job.
right. Whereas a real estate agent cannot have that happen, a brokerage firm or that sort of thing. So that's part of our success on that. I would encourage managers to maybe consider doing that and offering that service because I will say almost all investors go, "Man, I thought this was going to be easy," right? I handle the eviction for them, and then they go, "Will you manage my property for me?" And I go, "Nope, here for the next eviction," but
Yeah.
I do see it as a potential good lead generation.
I want to talk about the business, but I want to talk about the failed business first. And so
Yeah,
you
sure.
tried, did you raise venture? Did you get some
I
angel
did.
money? And talk to me about the vision of like you're the bed bug guy. What was the product or the offering going to be?
Basically, we were really looking at large apartment buildings,
Mm.
housing authorities, any sort of old folks home situations. The thing about bed bugs is as you age, most people become aware that they have a bed bug infestation by the bites. The bites are
Mhm.
very distinct, and about half the population gets an allergic reaction to them. So half the population never knows, right? And so we were providing a service to large landlords like that, right? And you get a place, infestation rates are about 11% nationally.
Mm.
So, 11% of the population in the United States will or have experienced bed bugs at some point in their lifetime,
Mm.
right? And so we were going from the approach of making it easier for the landlord to do that. And when they did need to treat, they knew exactly where to treat because of all this massive monitoring network throughout the property. And they caught it a lot earlier. With bed bugs, that's the whole thing is catching them early. You're going to reduce your cost. You're going to reduce the time for the amount of spraying that has to happen, the reputational damage, right? If you've got a 60 unit apartment building and one tenant has bed bugs, you're not going to wind up on the news. But every week I see some housing authority that their entire building is infested, right? That took a lot of time and neglect to happen. And so if we can catch that problem early, but again, AI changed that, and ultimately, people don't want to buy the prevention; they want the cure. So, good product could have changed the world.
Mm.
There's a lot of products in the world like that.
So you raise some money, it doesn't work out, which is fairly common for most tech startups. Now you're this expert. How has that impacted you? Right? Is this something that's your day to day, you're on site, or are you consulting? Are you advising? Like, help me understand that.
Yeah, so I consult. It's a Zoom call just like this. Clients walk around their house, show me what their situation is. It's a little questionnaire beforehand. Are you in an apartment? Are you in a house? Where are you located? Climate makes a big difference. There's
Hmm.
all these factors that happen. Are you alone? Do you have six people in your family? Do you have pets? That sort of stuff. And then show me where you live, right? And some people's houses are immaculate and some people's houses are not so clean, right? One of the misconceptions about bed bugs is it's like a dirty thing. It not at all, right? What really matters, people associate with low income housing and that sort of thing. Wealthy people are actually more likely to be exposed to bed bugs because you're more likely to travel, go out to dinner, cab rides, do all the stuff, right? You're most likely to be more mobile and outward in your house, right? Than in just in your house. The difference is that people with financial means, when they have a problem, they write the check to the exterminator, right? They write the $1,200 check and get it resolved. People that don't have that kind of financial resources, they go to Walmart and they spend $20 on the wrong product that just makes the problem worse. It just carries on and on and on. They'll kill the ones they can see, more are coming. There's a lot of emotional toll that this takes on people, the not ability to sleep, the embarrassment,
Hmm.
right? So,
For some reason, my kids love watching that Mark Rober video with bed bugs. I think I've seen it like 5 times, and it makes me itch every time. I understand you had a piece to play in that. Tell me about how that came
yeah,
about, and
one
we.
of the producers had reached out and we wound up, they kind of had us doing some fact checking stuff and then they edited some stuff. There's some errors in that. I forget what they are now. I haven't watched it in a couple of years, but yeah.
Really interesting. Must have been fascinating working with a large production like that.
I don't think they're a very large production, and we didn't actually know we were doing it at the time.
No
It
way.
wasn't, they weren't forthcoming like, hey, this is for you. I think they might have said it's for you. We just didn't know who it was. And it was like, hey, can you fact check some of this information here and whatnot? And it was like, no, this is wrong, this is wrong. And they're like, oh, we've already produced for this.
Interesting.
Oh, but I know they edited the most of the stuff out. And I think the two errors and I can't remember what they were minor. I don't think we even addressed them at the time. But
Right
so
on.
it's a good video. I'm not knocking on his video.
Fair. Interesting.
So
And so if somebody's thinking about it, what would be your like what direction would you lean from a treating the situation perspective?
if it was my family, I would hire an exterminator, right? But I can write the check. Not
Yeah.
everybody can write their check, right? And I know all the things to do to make it so that when that exterminator comes, he's super successful without spending a lot of time. An exterminator is going to come to your house. They might tip the bed over, right? Because that's like the obvious one. But they're not going to pull the baseboards out. They're not going to pull your nightstand and all the stuff that's in your nightstand and flip it out and look underneath the drawer. When's the last time you've seen the backside of the underside of the drawer in your nightstand, right? The exterminator is not going to do that either, right?
Hmm.
You need to do that if you have bed bugs. We got to find out where they're at.
Hmm.
Pulling all the wall plugs off, just all sorts of stuff to prep for and you run into, some of my situations are a lot more complicated. What happens when you have shared custody of children, right? And it might be you that has the bed bugs and you don't want your ex-wife to have this problem, right? Hopefully you don't want her to have this problem, right? You certainly don't want your kids to have to deal with this,
Hmm.
right? So how do you deal with that, right? We have a lot of protocols we can do to prevent spread, that sort of thing. Educate the ex-wife on what to look for so that, if you have an open enough situation that you can inform them. What do people do when, do you tell people at work? Do you tell your friends, your family? Some people are really open and it's easy for them to deal with that. Some people it's really, I had somebody that he was a bank president. He told the entire bank, hey, we had bed bugs, right? Nobody that works underneath him is going to fire him, right? He's the president. Well, it was likely one of the tellers that brought it in. She didn't tell anybody because she was new there. She's making $15 an hour. She was not in the same hierarchical place to be able to have that conversation. And so the right thing to do is to tell everybody, but that's not always the situation and the truth of what's going to happen. That's not the reality of what's going to happen. So we can help those people make sure that they don't transmit while they're dealing with their infestation.
I really appreciate you coming on, sharing the story. The whole arc was really fascinating. If people are looking to get in touch, whether it's regarding your property management business, the eviction side, or the bed bugs, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, it's bedbugcoach.com. Got my
What
email, got my phone number. You can even call me direct.
Right on. Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed getting a chance to hear your story.
Thanks, Colin.
Right on. And thanks to everybody for listening. We'll catch you all next week.